Well, good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and D Live. My name is Tom Luongo. I hope you're all having a great evening. It is Friday, August 9th, 2019. We've got a lot to talk about. And tonight we're going to talk mostly about Matteo Salvini calling for snap elections or for forcing snap elections onto the Italian government and Italian deep state that absolutely does not want one. And I'll explain why in grave detail for those of you who are a little behind on the story. And this is probably, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest story of the week. Nothing else really matters. All the other stuff is all just noise. And I mean, including Trump, labeling China a currency manipulator. None of that really matters. So, as always, if you please retweet, like, subscribe, all that stuff to this channel if you can. Remember, this is also a verified partner and publisher with Brave. So if you are on Brave, if you're watching this on Brave, you can tip this channel if you so choose. Just go up to the triangle to the right of the search bar on your browser window, and it'll be right there. FYI, for those of you who have installed Brave but don't use Twitter through Brave, and you still actually do use Twitter, when you're using Brave has a little tip symbol. It's right there now. So if you see a tweet from somebody you really like, bing, you can throw something at them and then let them know that they've got a tip waiting for them. Let's get this disseminated far and wide. I want to give a shout out to everybody who has taken me up on switching browsers. I see the numbers off the referral links. We did bang up business for that last month. It was really, really good. I have to say I'm very, very pleased by everybody's move. I've seen more than 250 signups through my referral links, which is really, really good. So it's as always, you can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. You can follow me over my regular work over at tomluongo.me, and you can sign up for and support the channel directly through Patreon or PayPal. You can PayPal me directly if you can find my email address. You can just DM me and I'll let you know. We'll talk about it off time. But if you want to support me through PayPal or through Patreon, you can do that at Patreon/GoldGoatsAndGuns. I think patrons, I think the little scare with Patreon has kind of subsided. People aren't nearly as skittish as they were, but I haven't set up a subscribe store account. I don't think I'm going to. We'll just continue to muddle along with Patreon for now. So gotta shout out to all my patrons. You guys are awesome. You're fantastic. And we'll get going. So we're going to talk about the political ramifications for this. We're also going to talk about some of the financial ramifications for this as well, because understand that Italy is the major story right next to the Brits as far as what happens to the UK, or what happens to the EU, I'm sorry, if these countries go into full revolt. Or in the case of the Brits, are already in full revolt, so whether or not they can the establishment in Brussels can keep that from occurring. Excuse me, I gotta clean my glasses, they're kind of dirty. So let's get started. So what happened this week? Well, there were rumors on Wednesday morning, or Thursday morning, sorry. Things really accelerated quickly, and I've written a lot about this in the last couple of days. I've got an article coming out for Strategic Culture. I've got one, should have one up on moneyandmarkets.com talking about this as well. And these are going to be I wrote a lot about this, trying to get them. So has Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, and there's rumors going around that he's going to try and shake Conte busily. I'm like, well, that's the story I'm writing about today. I was already a day behind trying to figure out what I was going to write for Strategic Culture. I usually do it on Tuesday, and here I am Thursday morning. Didn't have it done. So, like, banging the way on that, got a draft out, or actually got it sent in to editorial to Irina over at Strategic Culture, and go back and look at the headlines about 3 or 4 hours later, and oh well, he's called for snap elections. He's going to try and dissolve the coalition. So I had to go back immediately, rewrite all the copy last night, do it again. It is what it is. I sent Irina an email saying, give me about an hour, don't publish this one, don't give me about an hour. And I went through, cleaned it up, and went, well, okay, never mind. About 15 minutes is really all I needed. It just was what happened. So we're going to go through all that, Stojanovic, and I'll get to that in a minute. So what Salvini has done has said, I don't want to be a part of the coalition with Five Star Movement anymore because Five Star refuses to go along with any of his part of the agenda. Five Star got all of its agenda through. But now Salvini, who's in a dominant position in the polls, can't get Five Star to honor their side of the agreement. It doesn't hurt that you've got a cuck finance minister, for lack of a better term. You've got this handpicked finance minister, Giovanni Tria, who was consistently working against what the coalition governments actually want. You've got the same thing with the prime minister, both of whom were effectively picked by the president, Sergei Mattarella. And these three together, I consider the Troika of technocrats that actually run Italy, while Salvini and Five Star Movement leader Luigi Di Maio only think they're in charge, because they're not actually allowed to do any of the things that need to get done. And at the end of the day, of course, Conte is the one that, in the parliamentary system, is the one that brings business to the table. So that's what a lot of this is about. So to review for people who aren't hip to this, I know most of you who are watching this know the ins and outs of this. I know certainly the ones who show up, you guys know the ins and outs. But let's go back over the history real quick. In March of 2017, 2018, when the election came through, Lega, Salvini's party, grabbed about 17% of the vote. Five Star Movement grabbed about 28, 30% of the vote, something like that, just over 30% of the vote. They were able to put together a coalition government. And they're nominally ideologically opposed to one another, except for the fact that they're both decidedly Eurosceptic and we're both at least one point in the past wanting to leave the euro. And so they had that common ground, which is, well, we can unite, kind of like the progressives and the libertarians today would unite against the deep state here in the United States, while having to navigate the deep state itself and trying to get shit done. Imagine what would happen if, Tulsi Gabbard and Rand Paul formed a fusion party, ran here in the United States and won the presidency here in the United States, and had to deal with the entrenched bureaucracy that Donald Trump is dealing with now. Imagine that. See, would it even be worse than what we're seeing with Trump? Well, that's kind of the situation in Italy, right? So that's the story. That coalition has been under fire from the day it formed. Every time Salvini and Di Maio kind of looked at each other cross-eyed, it was all over the Western press, certainly in Europe. Oh my God, the government's going to fall. Oh my God, it's been like this for the last 14 months. The truth of the matter is I don't think Di Maio and are the problem. Right? I don't think Di Maio is the problem within Five Star Movement. The problem is, of course, is that Five Star Movement is an unruly lot, and Di Maio can't keep them under control and can't get them to do what he actually needs them to do. And so, since then, the polls have more than flipped. And if you remember, in May at the European parliamentary elections, Lega took 34% of the vote, Five Star only 17% of the vote, and those numbers have gotten even worse since then. Now Lega is taking the percentage points away from the other quote unquote center right party, Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia. They're now polling at 7%. Lega is polling between 38 and 40%. So it's perfect time for Salvini to do this. Now, he was goaded openly to try this back in May, after the EU elections. But the numbers back then didn't work for him. And Conte, the prime minister, threatened to resign if Salvini's program was too radical. And Salvini just said, okay, well, that's fine. You're going to do what I want you to do anyway, which he wound up doing. And it was a bluff, and Salvini called it, and this is where we are now. And then Now fast forward 2 months and the polls have shifted 8%, and that 8% is all that's necessary. Because here's the gig. Go back one step further. During the last days of the Renzi government, the Democrat-led government, the election, the representation in the Italian parliament was changed. So that it looks almost exactly like it does in Ukraine and Germany and a couple of other places, which 2/3 proportional representation, 1/3 first past the post, which is a great system to try and stop any populist insurgents if the major parties can hold serve. But if they can't hold serve, if the polls shift radically like they have, that system actually now works against them. Because now the populist parties, the opposition parties, are now the dominant parties. And now they have an opportunity to take 55 to 60% of the seats in the parliament. This is exactly what happened in Ukraine a couple of weeks ago. Zelensky's Servant of the People party only pulled 41, 42%, maybe as high as 45. They wound up with nearly 60% of the seats. 56, 57% of the seats in the Verkhovna Rada. So this is the situation now in Italy. That's what the polls are suggesting. No one's talking about it in these terms, but that's what the polls are suggesting. So think about this. So in June or late May, Conte was threatening to resign and throw the government and collapse the government so that there could be a vote that would wind up, that they were betting would wind up in a hung parliament, one where Lega would have to, partner up with cobble together a coalition and then give away all of their power in order to get the coalition together, which is exactly what would happen. The minor parties would take would force all the juicy positions to be given to them, even though they don't deserve it, even though they have less than 10% of 10% of support. But that's the way it would have played. Berlusconi would not be on the way to the political graveyard and to the end of his life. He would be, Bunga Bunga would be back in force playing his role as a stalking horse for Brussels, which I'm completely convinced he is. Now, shift to today, and Conte's saying, "Whoa, you can't just decide to get rid of the government. You don't have that power, Mr. Interior Minister and Deputy Prime Minister and the leader of the party that has 40% of the Italian electorate. Give me a fucking break, dude." So, pull the other leg and play fucking Jingle Bells. Play that game all you want, but you're not going to be able to hold this back, especially since, according to the Bloomberg article I read yesterday, God, it doesn't feel like it was 36 hours ago, both the Democrats, Renzi's party, and Five Star, and Lega, and probably the Brothers of Italy all want Parliament blown up. That's like 65% of Parliament right there. So Conte wouldn't survive a vote of no confidence under just about any other circumstance. If that's true. Five Star's not going to make a deal with the Democrats. They were founded on the idea of being the anti-Democrats. So there's no workable coalition regardless. The only thing they can do is to continue to play this game, this game of that. As bad as this current coalition government is, it's the best case scenario for Brussels right now. That's the part I want you to take away from right now. Right? That's the part I want you to take away. Think about that for a second. Right now, this fucking hated coalition of Eurosceptics that the establishment, the Italian deep state, and the Soros crowd and the rest of them have been doing everything imaginable to try and break up, is their best case scenario in a general election. I don't know about you, but I got the biggest fucking bit of schadenfreude I've had in quite a long time. I'm going to pull out the Jeremy Clarkson. This is my smug face. I mean, how fucking smug do we have to be here? I don't even know how to do smug liberal, but if I could, but dude, how awesome is that, right? So that's the scenario as I see it. Now, Conte's going to try and slow his roll as much as possible. Mattarella's going to back him up, the president, because again, Conte can go to Mattarella if the parties tell him to do this. Conte has to go to Mattarella, who cannot accept his resignation, which will then force a vote of no confidence. And if a vote of no confidence goes down, then Mattarella is going to slow his roll, try and cobble together some kind of coalition for months. He'll do this. Okay, because that's what Mattarella's, that's where he is. But here's the gig, because here's the other side of this. The last time this went on, when Mattarella first tried to intervene in the coalition talks and nixed the first choice of five-star of the coalition governments for finance minister. He had to survive and impeach. There was a serious threat of them impeaching him for him overstepping his authority as president. Because the president's position is very, very ceremonial, but he played the power of that position to the hilt in unprecedented manner, in much the same way that John Bercow, the Speaker of the House in the British Commons, has way overstepped his fucking authority during all this Brexit nonsense. Like, incredibly overstepped his authority. Throwing out 400 years worth of parliamentary procedure because that's the way he interprets the rules. I mean, serious tyrannical shit going on here. So you know that they're scared to death of what's actually going on. So, oh yeah, I'm a huge Top Gear / The Grand Tour fan. Tangent. I've probably watched almost all of Clarkson, May, and Hammond every episode twice. Some episodes 4 or 5 times. Like, I've watched the Vietnam episodes so many times, it makes my head spin. I can practically recite it. But, and let's never forget the greatest segment on Top Gear of all time, when they went to Russia and did and talked about communist cars, and they did the drag race between a Lada Riva and a Border Collie. Funniest goddamn thing I ever saw. Of course, it probably wasn't true. Doesn't matter. It was still really funny. All right. He does have a great smug face. Good evening, Stephen Burnage. How are you? So, the worst case scenario, the best case scenario for them is the current situation, and they all know it. That's why, in the last 2 days, Italian bond yields have moved no less than 40 basis points. 40. Oh, gotta do that the other way around. 40. 40 basis points in 2 days. Are you fucking kidding me? Of course, they should have never moved as low as they've been in the first place. It was a travesty that Italian bond yields were trading where they were, as the ECB and the other central banks tried to create the fiction that there was general investor demand for Italian junk fucking debt. Okay? So, embedded in that same article that Zero Hedge put out yesterday morning, talking about what was going on with Salvini, they talked about who's actually been buying all this Italian junk debt. It turns out to be the Japanese. Think about that for a minute. It turns out to be the Japanese are buying billions of dollars of Italian junk debt. For what reason? Oh, I don't know. What reason could that possibly be? Excuse me for a second. For what reason could this possibly be? Well, we know what reason that is. Because the fucking ECB and the Troika told them to buy it in order to create the fiction that there was a market for all this crappy Italian debt, to keep the whole thing running for as long as possible. Because back in December, the ECB said they're not going to buy any more Italian debt. And since then, all year long, they've had other freaking central banks buying this stuff, or forcing the Japanese banks to stuff this shit onto their balance sheets. And this is going on while the euro-yen cross is cratering. The yen has been strengthening versus even the dollar. And the euro's lost 10%. And Italian bond yields keep dropping more and more negative. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, the Japanese are so bad at math that they would continue to buy in record amounts this Italian debt at ever higher prices, at ever losing yield spreads? Like, I'm not a fucking genius or nothing, but I know that's goddamn dumb. It's like, hey, I have an idea. Let's make a lot of money. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to sell our dollars for 90 cents and we're going to buy a lot of them. And we're going to buy a lot of them. This is what they're doing. Literally. So when this scenario finally played itself out, boom, Italian bond yields up 50 freaking basis points in 2 days, 40, depending on where you are in the yield curve, anywhere from 40 to 50 basis points in 2 days. No one's talking about it. Nobody's talking about this. They're all like, oh, there's nothing going on. Yeah, well, Salvini, he's not going to be able to do anything. And the markets continue to bet in every other venue that everybody's got it under control. And they don't. They don't have a goddamn clue as to what to do now. Because this is and Salvini, except for Salvini knows exactly what he's doing. He saw the polls, he looked at the scenario, and Stoyanovich asked earlier, it's like, why are they getting so upset about this train that there's this train funding that M5S wouldn't go for, and that's what set Salvini off. And they're already building it. The money's already there. Right. They're already building the freaking train. And yet, or the rail line. And yet, why? It was an excuse. Nothing more, nothing less. Salvini needed an excuse to jettison his partners and say, look, Luigi, I know you're trying, but I can't work with you fucking people anymore. And I got to get control of this thing, and we've got to blow this thing up now, and we can have the opportunity to blow this up now. I wouldn't put it past him, both of them, to know exactly what they're doing. So, look, we're going to flip-flop because we need to. But we're going to put us in the dominant position because you guys shouldn't be ruling. Remember, De Maio survived a leadership challenge right after the European elections. But he doesn't have full control over the party. So therefore, they shouldn't be the party in power. If these guys are truly committed Eurosceptics and that's their first goal, then putting Salvini in charge makes the most sense. In every way. So, what happens next? So what happens next is everybody will slow their roll as much as possible in order to try and make this look like it's going to, like the cooler heads are going to prevail. Not going to. The closer we get to Brexit Day, Salvini is going to continue to ratchet up the rhetoric. He's going to continue to ratchet up. He's probably going to submit a budget that no one likes just to make it even worse. Because look at who we have coming in. We have an incompetent European Commission president, Ursula von der Leyen, sorry. We've got Christine Lagarde is going to be in charge of the ECB after October. I don't know where Mario Draghi is going to go, but if he was smart, he'd retire himself to Elba so that nobody can fucking find him after the shit job he's done. Right. The whole thing is going to start letting loose in October as the budget situation with Italy. Italy's going to use the budget again as a hammer, as a cudgel over the EU. I'm telling you. And if Mattarella doesn't submit, so if Mattarella and Conte don't submit to new elections, which could easily get done by around the middle of November or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all going to be bad. And it's going to happen concomitantly with what happens with Brexit, which is on Halloween. And if you don't think that there's a Brexit angle to this, you're nuts, because there is. Because just look at how all of this slices out in time. And how many fires the new European Commission is going to have to deal with. The new European Parliament is going to have to deal with. The new European Commission can't even... Italy hasn't even submitted their nominee for the new European Commission. They might not even be in the EU by then. This is going to get ugly in a way and so quickly, it's going to get out of control really, really fast. Really fast. And the more I watch Salvini play, the more I watch the method to his madness. I'm like, dude, you're brilliant. I hate this, and I hate to pat myself on the back or anything. I keep saying this. I'm like, I wonder if he reads my work or not, because this is exactly what I would do. I would fuck these people on timing and everything else so badly. I've been saying this for 2 years. This is your game plan. This is how you have to deal with this. This is how you have to go about this. And he's got it. He's got 67% of Italians don't think being in the EU is a good idea anymore. He's got moving off the euro up into the 40% range. Okay? I mean, this is serious. He knows exactly what he's doing and why, which is why they're trying to, and all they got now is a pathetic Russia smear, which isn't going to work. Yes, Stephen Byrne, it's just like 67%. 2 out of 3 Italians think being in the EU is now bad for Italy. That's a number from earlier this year. That number is probably worse now. And then Stoyanovich brings up a great point, which is tangential to this, and I've talked about this before. With AfD rising in the eastern part of Germany and elections in 3 weeks in Saxony and Brandenburg, which has been in the hands of the Social Democrats since World War II. That's on September 1st. AfD is probably going to win that. The Social Democrats are definitely not going to be in power. They're polling at like 13% or something. AfD is neck and neck with Merkel's CDU. And they'll probably run away with Saxony. It's going to get really interesting really quick if AfD is in a position to foster to broker the coalition government, because we're starting to see the ranks break apart in Germany, and it always happens this way. Once a party rises a certain level of power, all the virtue signaling is, we'll never partner up with those Nazis, those evil right-wing fascists. We'll never do that. Oh, they're in charge now. Well, we might have to, just to limit their control. You know what I mean? The virtue signaling is so freaking thick from these feckless lefty cocksuckers. It's not even funny. We're going to watch this shit play out. The CSU has been talking about this, about we might have to do something about it. The CDU is definitely going to cut a deal with AfD locally. And that's going to put significant pressure on Merkel, because the first state that loses an election to AfD, in which the CDU the local CDU has to partner up with them, all bets are off. The Greens could make a show in the East. They took Berlin, but they're not going to take Brandenburg. They're going to do well, but they're not going to do well enough, I don't think. I'll be very surprised. Not in Brandenburg and Saxony. I think the demographics were against them there. But in Berlin, yes. Merkel's so scared she's shaking. Well, I think what's happened to Angela Merkel is that she's such a control freak. This is a joke I used to use about Ralph Nader, that she's such a control freak, now her muscles are even rebelling against her. So Stephen Byrne says, did you see this? So each AfD MEP, that she argues that Brexit is the equivalent of losing 19 of the smallest countries in the EU. Yeah, there was a great speech by that speech wasn't by AfD's MEP. Speech was made by Alice Weidel, the leader of the parliamentary delegation to the Bundestag. She's effectively the leader, the political leader of the AfD. Oh, by the way, she's gay. There's a great article on RT about her and the woman from Serbia, about how these horrible right-wing evil Nazi parties are and they're all anti-gay and they're all anti-horrible and they're all this and they're all that, and they're all Nazis. Alice Weidel is the leader of she's the political leader of the delegation of the Bundestag, and she's married to a Sri Lankan woman. It's insane. Yeah, Brnovich, yes. No, they have. Well, they're. She's raising a child. She and her Sri Lankan beard. Sorry, I couldn't resist. No, they've adopted a couple of kids. Yeah, the Russian smear won't work in Italy. GGnM. The Italians love Russians. Yeah, I know. It's like, I like Russians. They're cool. Jonathan, you're actually one step ahead of me. Jonathan Gillespie asked, will the league impeach Mattarella once they have a commanding parliamentary majority? That's possible. It's very possible. I think what happens here is if Mattarella tries to slow the roll... See, Parliament's going to get sat even though there's no... I think Parliament's going to get sat even though there's no government, right? And then I think that's how that's going to work. And then we'll see. I'm not sure how that actually works. The Parliament gets sat and then the government is formed. And if Mattarella tries to nix the coalition that they try to form, very possible that something bad is going to happen to him from now. So, all right. Let's see. But you have to understand what's happening in Italy is incredibly impressive. Okay? Incredibly impressive. I think I thanks to a couple of regular watcher, whatnot, we have a long running email conversation. Sent me a great article from God, where the hell was it? From, remember, about the Italian deep state and about the history of the Italian deep state. And this goes back a long way. The whole idea of the United States of Europe, that the EU is now modeling itself on, comes out of Italian politics from the 1840s. This shit's that old. Okay, and we have to realize that that's what they're up against. And you can argue that the Italian deep state is older and deeper and more entrenched in so many different various forms and facets than a lot of others. And so it's just to see that he's been able to do this much damage to them this quickly, I mean, is incredibly impressive. Forget the fact that he's young. Let's now start really looking at this thing. What is Salvini? He's in his 40s. He can't be more than 45. I don't know what the hell, how old he is. I can actually look it up, but I don't feel like it. A guy could be in power for a long time. So they don't have to have a no confidence vote, Stoyanovich. Conte can just resign and Mattarella could accept it. But if Mattarella doesn't accept it, then they have to have a no confidence vote, and then he has to deal with it. And then they have, a certain amount of time to call elections, 40 to 70 days. Parliament's on recess for all of August. They won't be back until, I think, September 9th. Something like that. I was reading this afternoon. Mark Shear says, Italy should also tell Trump to stick a sanctions and trade with Iran. It would be nice. I don't see it happening anytime soon. I don't see it happening with Salvini in charge. Salvini and Trump get along well. Salvini has patterned himself in some ways around Trump, though he's not Trump. He's actually winning against the deep state as opposed to playing ball with them. Tweety Bird says, did you see the video where Salvini apologizes for being late to a press conference because he had to return all those rubles? Oh, I love it. That's the kind of thing you have to do to these people. You have to make a joke out of it. You have to laugh at them. You have to show... Look, people with power can withstand anything. They can withstand withering criticism. They can withstand vitriol. They can withstand violence. They can withstand everything. The one thing they cannot abide is laughter. Because laughter, when you laugh at them, then they know they don't have you. They don't control you. Because they can make you angry. They can make you pissed off. They can make you triggered. They can do all that stuff. But if you just fucking laugh at them, yeah, whatever. Fuck off. You're useless. you think I'm a Putin agent and you make fun of it. They don't know what to do with that. At that point, that's when the escalation starts, because that's when they have to crack down with violence and everything else. They don't have any other options. It's always best at the end of the day to treat them like you treat anybody else you don't respect. When they say something dumb, you laugh in their face. You just you treat them the way I treat France, who isn't here tonight. More's the pity. So I could, heckle him, because it's more fun that way. 73, so he's 46, because he's 5 years younger than I am. Fitch just raised Russia's credit rating. Well, Fitch can only hold a fraudulent rating on a country for so long without losing their credibility. Yeah, so much for sanctions. Exactly. Oh, I didn't see that, but that's awesome. That's good news. Now let's see if there's any good. Now let's see if the Bank of Russia actually responds to that by lowering interest rates by 0.5 point, so they can actually unleash a virtuous credit cycle in Russia. Because fucking Nabilina is killing me here. Stoyanovich says people in power tend not to be alphas. They tend to be pseudo-alphas who were ridiculed or bullied as school children and then absolutely cannot handle being laughed at because it cuts right to the core of their insecurity. And they wield power as a way to mask the fact that they're incredibly insecure, anxious, and know they're not competent. By the way, Trump only looks strong. Trump's a classic narcissistic bully, fronting a big personality when he can't handle the mildest of criticism. I'm not a big fan of it either, frankly. I don't like getting criticized either. It kills me. But guess what? I don't have any power. I don't want power. What I do with it? Pretty. We've had that discussion before. You guys know what I would do. You guys know what I would do with power. There'd be a whole lot of burned poppy fields in Afghanistan and a whole lot of CIA guys with Spetsnaz down their ass. Tweety Bird says, I like Alex Jones' description of these power players. Pot-bellied demons. Alex does have a way with words. You mean they are Germans. Nice. All right. So, a couple other points about the current situation in Italy. Look, no one ever really believed that Five Star and Lega could form a stable marriage. This was always a marriage of convenience between two parties that were ideologically so far apart it wasn't going to ever work for any length of time. But it's fine. It served its purpose. It was never the end game. It was always the first. This was always the first act, right? Get the Eurosceptics in power. Make the power the power brokers, freeze. Make them react. Make them do things. Look, everything is. These are people that are so used to being unchallenged, critically unchallenged. They have control of the narrative. They have control of the media. They got control of the financial markets, and control of everything. Because of that, they're not used to being fundamentally challenged. They don't know how to deal with actual challenges. And because of that, they're just not particularly good at what they do. it's very easy just to continue to work on, to run on autopilot, and continue to look powerful and use that power in the most unjudicious manner in order to maintain the results that you've got to that point. That's what they do. And that ultimately becomes a real problem in the end, because they become very predictable, and how to deal with them, and become very predictable to get them to react. They're usually the ones setting the agenda. And so everybody who's ever, watched football or any sport knows that offense has the advantage over defense, because offense knows where the fuck it's going, whereas defense has to read and react. It doesn't matter if it's hockey, it doesn't matter if it's football, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, baseball is kind of the one sport that you really don't have that much control over, because at the end of the day, the batter is only, the interface between the batter and the pitcher is a probabilistic nightmare, right? Yeah, this guy's a pull hitter, but he could swing late on a curveball and wind up hitting it to the left center field, right? So and so what they like to do is be in control and always be on offense. Well, once these populists have gotten in power, and these populists are good, Trump is driving me crazy because he's not doing the things he should be doing, but he's still setting the narrative. He's still setting the control. He still has some amount of control over the direction that events are going. Even though I don't like the direction he's taking us, he still has some control over it. He knows what he's doing. Salvini is absolutely in control. Viktor Orban is absolutely in control. Nigel Farage is absolutely 3 steps ahead of these people. He knows exactly what to do to get them to react and make a bad decision. And because of that, Marine Le Pen to a lesser extent as well. So because of that, they're now having to play defense. They don't know how to play defense. Their idea of playing defense is to take a big fucking 12-pound sledgehammer and try and kill a tick with it. They're swinging sledgehammers at flies. And they're doing a lot of damage along the way. And they're showing everybody just how, one, bad they are at playing defense, and two, how little control they actually have, and how scared they are, because they're complete overreactions. These are people that would use a nuclear bomb to deal with a rat infestation, when all you really need are, a bunch of conservatives who are loyal to Trump. Ba-dum-bum. All right. Mark Shear says, Tom, Russia's out of debt, loaded up with gold, and having inflation under control. Why would they cut their interest rate? Because their interest rate's way too high. And it means that internal lending, like it or not, they don't, the Russian states loaded up with gold. They don't have a lot of government debt, and certainly they don't have a lot of debt they don't have a lot of debt in at the corporate level either, but they do still need to have a market rate of interest. And it's very obvious at this point that the central bank has the interest rate set way too high. The Russian yield curve is inverted again. The short end of the yield curve is half a point higher, 50 basis points higher than the latter end of the yield curve. Russian 10-year bonds are trading at 6.8%. The benchmark rate's 7.25. Nabiulina should cut rates by 100 basis points tomorrow, and everything would be fine. The market wants the risk, and there's not 7.5% worth of risk in the Russian investment market right now. It's probably closer to 5.5, and this is a benchmark rate. So obviously, add a couple of points of net interest margin for the banks. So, but business and construction loans in Russia are running 11% right now. Okay, really. Nabiulina's way too worried about what she's still way too freaking. She's either way too worried about a rising dollar, or she's and falling oil prices, or she's still a fifth columnist for the freaking IMF trying to hold Russia back. Take your pick. Pick an interpretation. That's what's going on. She needs to cut interest rates. If she were to cut interest rates by 25 basis points tomorrow, the ruble would drop from 65 to 63.5. Mark my words. I know this because Tyler knows this. No, I know this because they've done this before. And every time she's been this late with a fucking rate cut, the ruble appreciated, didn't depreciate. Because there's not enough rubles in the market. She finally opens up the floodgates a little bit and the demand for the ruble rises. Because remember, if you want the ruble to circulate as the dominant currency, the dominant investment currency in your country, it can't trade at plus 500 basis points to the U.S. dollar, which is also still floating around and investable within Russia. Okay, it's still a multi-currency economy. And it's not like we don't understand this in the United States. We don't take out loans in euros. Okay, we take out loans in dollars. Well, in Russia, you can take out loans in either rubles or dollars. It's time. It's beyond time. They should have done this a year ago. 15 months ago. She should have cut a quarter of a point every 3 months for the last year and a half. She'd be down to 6%, and the Russian economy would be growing at 5% right now. And it would be real growth. It wouldn't be a credit bubble. It would be real growth. A lot of people say, Rescue Steve says, a lot of people don't realize that the Kingdom of Italy is younger than the United States. You're right, it is. Modern Italy, modern Germany, these are very young countries. These are fictions up until very recently. Yeah, classic example. We saw Kamala Harris froze and did not know how to deal with being attacked by Tulsi Gabbard. Again, classic example, somebody who's always in control on the attack, and then the minute she was attacked, she didn't know what to do with it. From what I hear, the rat infestation in Baltimore is so bad that the nuclear option should be on the table. Well, eventually, what cats are for. I am sure that the Modi Kashmir thing is because he thinks Imran Khan is weak when really all Khan wants is peace. Stephen Burnage says that's probably part of it. I think also part of it is that Modi is getting his directions from the Brits. Everything to me, I wrote an article about this earlier in the week. I talked about this obliquely, I think in the last live stream, maybe a week ago. But I really do believe that the more I look around the world, everywhere where there's a hotspot right now is a place where the British deep state has got deep, abiding roots. Hong Kong, Afghanistan, Iran, India, Pakistan. I was talking about this with a friend of mine the other day, and we were speculating about why would the Chinese put this extradition treaty together for Hong Kong? Because it's not to put jaywalkers. It's not to extradite jaywalkers. It's not to extradite, It's extradite Chinese triads that are still, running drugs. To extradite bankers at places like Standard Chartered and HSBC and Lloyd's and all the other deep British banks with deep British ties that manipulate the offshore yuan market in order to affect the Chinese onshore banking system and credit markets. Because these fuckers are all... Think about that. I don't have any proof of this. This is me pure speculation. But to me, that seems like the most reasonable thing. And the minute that the Chinese made a move against British assets, all of a sudden we have a color revolution. Rescue C says, Tom, do you have a prediction on when the Fed fund rate hits 0? 3 to 4 weeks after there's a new sovereign debt crisis in Europe. And that would be the short end of the Italian yield curve reaching above, what, 2-3%? Something like that. And the long end of the yield curve growing to, what, 7, 8, 9%? Isn't the current rate a blinking red number? Yeah. I mean, everything right now, all the bond yields are a huge red flag. Well, if she were to cut interest rates, then Trump could label Russia a currency manipulator. I don't know what the fuck they could do about it. Russia doesn't give a shit. Perhaps controlled growth in Russia is the prudent course. It's not strong enough. She's hurting. She's holding back an economy that wants to run. And I don't mean, this is an economy that should be running at 4% right now. It would run for 4% real growth. I'm dead serious. I'm not normally in favor of low interest rates. For Russia, yes. I think Russia should be around 6%. I think the United States should be at 6%. So it's not in favor of low interest rates versus high. I'm not. I'm an Austrian. I'm interested in the market rate of interest. That the central bank can get it right on the downside and the high side. We generally get it wrong on the low side because we in the United States, subject to Triffin's paradox, need to run budget deficits to liquefy the world. The Russians, on the other hand, do not. The Russians have cleaned up their balance sheet. They've cleaned up. They've wrung all the inflation out of the market. They've run all producer price inflation and everything else out of the market. There's absolutely no reason why they can't develop. They're harming the development of secondary and tertiary and quaternary industries, second, third, fourth, fifth order industries in Russia right now because the interest rates are too high. Period. I think that at the same time, the Russian state needs to get out of subsidizing certain aspects of this should be coupled with deregulating certain aspects of the Russian economy, which were put there as crutches to help pump prime certain aspects of it. So housing, for example, is always a problem. Giving out low interest rate loans as a way to get around central bank policy is just dumb, and those need to go away at the same time that the central bank lowers rates. You can thank all those Rhodes Scholars for all the stuff we're talking about. Yes, exactly, Stoyanovich. Exactly. The Hong Kong falling will cause the collapse of HSBC. I think it's going to happen anyway. The British deep state is far worse than the American deep state. They control the American deep state. That much is absolutely true. Bojo is Boris Johnson is British deep state. I know. That's what scares me about him. I don't know that the U.S. deep state is more powerful than the Brits. The Brits have control. We may have more power, but the Brits control that power. They control it because they have deep ties in the freaking State Department, the CIA, all the intelligence agencies, Treasury, Department of Justice. It's terrible. Did I see that Chase forgave all outstanding credit card debt for all of its Canadian customers? Yeah, it's because they exited the Canadian market a couple of years ago, and then they only had there was just legacy balances, and yeah, Chase let it all go. I'll give you an idea of how much they really need that money, right? Just how low can negative interest rates go? If it was up to Larry Summers, it would be negative infinity. We'll see. Lagarde will do whatever she's told to do. Freedom Fox says, Tom, given your earlier comments on Afghanistan, what do you think of Pete Buttigieg's work there as naval intelligence who worked on terrorist finance networks? I did not know that he was naval intelligence. I hate Pete Buttigieg even more than I hated him before. Why do you think that there's significant desire to position him as the VP candidate? Because that's what's going on. A lot of money behind Buttigieg. A lot of people, Mark Scheer says, including myself, Mark Scheer says, used to laugh at the late Linda LaRouche about the Brits, and he's now proven to be right. Yeah, it kind of sucks, doesn't it? People you don't like. Liberty Lasur says, Tom, your articles are brilliant. I've been reading them for years on Mises. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do try. I don't know that they're all brilliant, but some more than others. Let's just put it that way. Every once in a while, I go back and read them and go, dude, when the fuck did you write that? Because sometimes, well, interesting thought. I'm going to stop talking about comments for a second, just because this is more of a generic thing. The creative process, and what I do is, even though I'm talking about facts and figures and trying to interpret facts and figures and what they mean, that is a creative process. It's an incredibly creative process. It's no different than having to create up characters out of whole cloth and create narratives and all that. So you're creating narratives. You're just trying to create narratives in the real world and then seeing if it fits the data, right? That process, in order to do it really well, you have to you get into, I don't know about you, but I mean, being kind of Aspie or ADHD, whatever you want to call it, I tend to think of if I am on the spectrum, which I think I am, it manifests itself in the ability to hyper focus in a way that is kind of it's kind of scary, actually. And that hyper focus means that you get into states and you write things and you make connections that you're not really consciously aware of after you're done with them. You're done, and then you exit the state, and then you go and you're going to put it out in the world. And okay, so I write it and I put it out in the world. And if I didn't write it down, like up until the date when I started writing everything down and then publishing it publicly, these ideas would just kind of go away, right? And not just go away, but even the constructions themselves, the word constructions, whatever. Now I get to go back and look at them, and I get to go, damn, dude, you were on fire that day. Or you weren't on firing on all cylinders that day. And you can see that sometimes when you do that, you're not always going to be right. You're gonna write things, and you're gonna think through things. You're gonna come to like odd conclusions that are only half right, or the conjecture is like you're right there, but you missed some vital piece of information and went off at a tangent. But you can see that the thought process was honest, and I can see it myself all the time when I see why certain predictions or certain conjectures turn out to be, horribly wrong, and they are. But but you can't not do it that way, because if you start trying to censor yourself that way, you start to not get into that state, you'll never reach the level of insight and analysis that you need to create what economists call that unique selling proposition, your USP, which is what I have to do, which is what I do. So, to the best of my ability. In the great word, in the immortal words of the great Groucho Marx, they can't all be good. All right. Back to the comments. Stephen Burners, I was based in Islamabad for a while. I grew to like Pakistanis, but their system of government is totally unstable. The warlords from the tribal areas have the real political power. Thank you, Dave. Dave Gross says, those are excellent comments on the artistic/creative process. It's not flawless, but the hits and misses are all that's necessary. You got to remember that, artists do that. That not everything they're going to produce is going to be great. They can have a great moment in life. They can have a great period in their life. And the rest of their life could be, just trying to get back there. The best example I have for that is a guy like Frank Herbert, the guy who wrote Dune. Sci-fi classic Dune. Herbert wrote one great book and then spent the next 40 years or 35 years trying to write that same book again better. Couldn't do it. And believe me, I read enough bad Frank Herbert to know that Dune was the only good thing he ever wrote. But Dune is brilliant. I take nothing away from it. Joseph Heller, Catch-22, same thing. One good book. J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye. One good book. Philip K. Dick, about 15 or 18 good books. He wrote 50, but about 15 of them are really, really good. He wrote them all on meth and speed and every other goddamn thing. But you can see the ones that really captured. But he was an uncommon talent. Imagine if Philip K. Dick had been properly nurtured in an environment where there was money to be made writing science fiction. He would have written half as many books, twice as good. That, in some ways, is unbelievably scary. Why has LaRouche been attacked? Too much truth? Yeah, probably. The commies have been in charge here in the United States, Brett Harris, since what? The 50s? Fucking Comintern assholes from both the regular Comintern guys and the Trotskyites have been in charge of the political narrative for 70 years. I don't know. Stephen Byrne says you're close to brilliant too. I don't know. I appreciate the sentiment. I don't like to look at it that way because I don't need trust me. I don't need the ego boost. What I know is that I have what I have. I lever it as best as I can, and if that's in the upper, quartile or whatever of what we're great. And if not, it doesn't matter because I got news for you. Because you're smart doesn't mean you're going to be rich. Doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to take care of yourself. Speaking of Philip K. Dick, have I ever read Stanislaw Lem? I've actually meant to read Solaris and some others a couple of times of his many times. I never got around to it. So it was always on my list and I never got to it. So I guess I missed some comments about Russia's missile mishaps recently. Dragon M says, look, when testing such hypersonic weapons, mistakes will happen until things are perfected. The Russians are pushing hard right now and are way ahead of the world in this technology. You're absolutely right about that. El Vaccaro says, I like Stephen King's stories. I don't necessarily like how he writes those stories. Oh, yes. Stephen King's got great story ideas in his head. He should hand them to somebody who can actually fucking write. Rescue C says, I think the rest of the original Dune series is good. Granted, not as good as the first book, but interesting. Dune Messiah is a placeholder. Children of Dune, I remember reading it the first time and liking it. But I really love the character of Alia for some reason. I think she was the best character in the book. I don't remember much about Children of Dune. But I remember saying it wasn't bad. Chapter House was terrible. I barely made it through Heretics. Not Chapter, God Emperor. God Emperor was god awful. Heretics of Dune was, and I got about 100 pages in the Chapter House and went. And then I went and reread Amber because I needed to cleanse myself of too many words. Too many words. You can do so much more with so little. Please. Stephen Byrne says you're not at risk if your ego taking over. Well, I appreciate that. I have my wife. This is one of the main things that Camille is really good at. Trust me on that one. Who can really break the deep state? I trust the people, but damn, lots of truth out there that is unseen. It's true. The deep state will break itself because it's unsustainable. And the forces of control and forces of decentralization are expanding faster than they can control. And then they can, stick fingers and like the little Dutch boy. It's happening. Dune is being done again, finally, and it's being done by Denis Villeneuve, who did Blade Runner 2049, Sicario, and The Arrival, all of which are excellent films. If you have not seen them, arguably Blade Runner 2049 is better than Blade Runner. I know that seems like heresy, but damn, is Blade Runner 2049 good. Tenjin says Solaris was a good movie, the Tarkovsky version, not the American remake. I've seen the American remake and I really liked it. Then again, I tend to like Soderbergh when he's not being insufferable, being an insufferable shitlib. Because he started out as a solid libertarian, then he became more shitlib as he got older. Because, well, guess what, baby boomer. And I have not seen the Tarkovsky version either. I've heard it's very, very good. I have not watched it. I really liked the Soderbergh movie with George Clooney, but I was surprised by it. I didn't expect to like it, but I thought it was very good. But it was a great story, so in some ways it doesn't matter. You know, you can if the story is good, even a marginal script and a bad director and a bad direction, or even a miscast lead or something, can still make story work. Can still make a film can still kind of work if the story is strong enough. And I mean story with a capital S in the Bob McKee sense of the word story. Bob McKee wrote one of the seminal books in screenwriting called Story. Robert McKee. And if you want to understand how screenplays and how novels and screenplays and whatnot are properly organized and structuralized, you need to read Story. It's a great book, if you can find it. Must take a deft hand to keep Tom on the straight and narrow. I'm actually really quite boring. I had a physical earlier in the week on Monday, actually. I was rejiggering my life insurance, and so that triggered an in-home physical, right? And so we're going over all these things, like, so drink marijuana, no. Cocaine, no. I'm saying no to so many things after all. She got to the cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just to be interesting, can I at least say yes? I don't do anything. I fucking don't even drink anymore. It's terrible. So yeah. It's the family does keep you grounded. Having Camille as a wife, that keeps you grounded. Could not get through the Lynch Dune. Yeah, and neither did anybody else. By the way, it's terrible. What should I watch? The Sci-Fi Channel's remake, the miniseries, is good if very, very low budget. But you should just read the book. The book is phenomenal. You should just read the book. Or, buy the audiobook and listen to the audiobook. It's very, very, very good. And it's the kind of book that is almost, I'll be impressed if they're able to film Dune without, I'm going to be interested to see how they film it. Now that Frank Herbert's not there to mung up the screenplay with, hours of his fucking prose, it should be interesting to how they streamline it. I know there's going to be at least 4 hours with the film. I think they're going to do 2 movies. But that's all I want. Yes, all women, not just Tom's wife, are programmed to test men's egos. You're damn right they are. Where are we? We're at an hour 9. I gotta get going, guys. So, all right. Last thing before we go. Best news of the day for me. The WoW Classic beta test, stress test, is going to go until Monday. It was supposed to end 6 hours ago. Dude, it's been like 24 hours worth of nostalgia going back in time to 2004 and playing World of Warcraft in a way that I played a lot of World of Warcraft from the day it came out until 2010. I was in a raiding guild. I tanked, I healed, I DPS'd, whole nine. But playing WoW Classic has been really kind of fun. And I'm looking forward to playing that game with my daughter. Because we've been playing WoW, but current World of Warcraft is, in common parlance, it's a face roll. Take your face, roll it across the keyboard. Oh, look, you got loot. You don't have to actually play. The game's almost on autopilot. And Sophie's even to the point where she's like, Dad, it's just too easy. So I will be down for anyone of you who is interested. You just let me know. I'll be on the WoW Classic server, one of the North American servers. Send me a DM on Twitter or whatever. Come August 27th, we'll be playing Classic WoW. We'll need DPS. One of either me or Sophie. One's going to tank, the other one's going to heal. We haven't decided yet. I think Sophie's going to make a druid so she can like not have to make a decision. We'll go from there. You guys take care. You have a great, great weekend. As always, install Brave. Do the thing. Give the like. Give the subscribe. Tweet it out far and wide. The whole 9 yards. And if you can, and if you do like what we do here, you know, tip through Brave, PayPal, Patreon. Links are all down below. You guys know what to do. You guys have a great weekend. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.